he responded to events such as Hurricane Rita and the San Diego firestorm. He expanded to firefighting with the Prescott Hotshots, in which he responded to Gustav, and additionally spending over 2,000 hours on wildfire incidents. He's currently the Disaster Clinical Coordinator, the Emergency Manager for KFSCH&RC Riyadh, which has a footprint of 1 million square meters, employs 11,000 staff, and treats 930,000 patients yearly. In 2015, he was nominated to the CBRN Committee for Saudi Arabia, responsible for drafting the CBRN National Action Plan through the UN. And in 2015, he received the IAEM Public Awareness Award for his efforts relating to MERS coronavirus. And this year, he received the IAEM Public Awareness Award for International and Global for the Diamond and Iceberg Model and became an Associate Emergency Manager with us. So I'd like to have Andrew come up and talk to us about his model, the Diamond and Iceberg Model, the value of disaster preparedness.
Thank you. Thank you. So there I found myself in the Saudi Arabian capital of Riyadh. Now, I know what you're all probably asking, what in the world was I doing there? Well, I was meeting with an organization, the leadership, and I was trying to convey the importance of proper resource and budget allocation when you're dealing with preparedness and mitigation, and how that directly correlates to the footprint post-shock or after the disaster occurs during the response and the recovery phase. Now, as I'm sure many of you have faced around the world, when you're dealing with either elected officials or leadership in organizations, they might be an expert in their field, but they might not have any type of understanding about emergency management. They might not have any type of understanding on how certain phases of emergency management can correlate and actually affect the end of your recovery and into your response phase, which can last for months or years. And as you can see here, I was dealing with this firsthand in Saudi Arabia. Now, during this meeting, I was able to explain it. I was able to get my point across and went well. But later, I found myself sitting in my hotel room saying, there's got to be a more effective way to do this. There's got to be some sort of illustration or concept or story I can explain to people who are not trained in emergency management, but could help them easily conceptualize this and grasp these ideas. So I sit in my hotel room, flipping through the TV, and I was like, I need a model. And if I need a model, obviously I need something with two pathways, something that's positive and something that's negative. So I was thinking, what could I use that's something that's positive and is known around the world? So I need your help on this. What's this saying? What's a girl's best friend? Anybody? Bam. So there I had the positive portion of the model. So okay, I had the positive, the good part. Now I needed something that was negative, but not something that's just not negative in the United States or Saudi Arabia or in any part of the world. I needed something that was known around the globe, something that had happened in the past. So naturally I thought, the Titanic, everyone knows about that. So naturally, icebergs fit the bill. Now, this is an example of the model. The first thing I want to draw your attention to is that line that goes across both the diamond and the iceberg called the shock line. That represents the point at which the disaster occurs. So when looking at the diamond portion of this model, you can see a lot of the mass of the model appears above the shock line. And again, the shock is the disaster. And what that mass above the shock line represents is proper budget allocation, resource allocation in the mitigation and preparedness phase. Now, inversely, when you look below the shock line or post-shock, post-disaster, you can see that the diamond is nice, uniform, and its footprint is quite small. Inversely, when you look over at the other side of the model, you see the iceberg. Now, who here has heard that an iceberg shows roughly 10% of its mass above the water? Has everyone pretty much heard that? Someone earlier was joking, they're like, actually, I heard it was 12.5%. But for the sake of this, we'll go with 10%. So that directly correlates to this model as well. And what this represents is a lack of preparedness, a lack of mitigation, a lack of planning. And that can be very little resource or budget allocation or none. Also, too, when you look after or post-shock, after the disaster occurs, you can see it's quite large. It's not uniform. It's not efficient. It kind of billows and has all these twists and turns in it. And again, that represents the footprint post-shock. And remember, what we're trying to do here is explain something as easy as possible in layman terms so people who aren't educated and in the profession you're all in can understand and grasp this. Now, when we're talking about the footprint, we're not only talking about monetary consequences, we're talking about consequences in continuity of operations. So if it's a facility that produces cars, how long is my facility going to be down for? When can I start producing cars or different cogs so I can start bringing more finance back into my company? Also, we're talking about loss of life, we're talking about injuries. And then finally, we're talking about damage to physical structure and physical assets. When can my facility be back up to produce these products? When could this damage to our critical infrastructure be, repaired? So this in a nutshell is the model. Now there's two great aspects about this model. The first is that it's scalable. So kind of like the incident command system, ICS, it's scalable. So you can use this for a personal citizen within the community. They can take this model and make their household into a diamond. They can stockpile 72 hours to a week of food, water, generators, gas. It can go to companies within the community. It can go to local governments, city governments, national governments, and even international organizations like the Red Cross or different NGOs. Another positive aspect about this is education and awareness. Personally, myself, I think any emergency management program is only as good as its education awareness. And that's with your consumers, or with the victims, or with the citizens, and with those putting these systems into place. So what we're doing here is we're teaching the general public, business owners, and decision makers on sexy emergency management terminology. Yes. So we've got words in here like mitigation, preparedness, response, recovery, continuity of operations. So what we're doing with this is we're giving the general public and those decision makers a way to conceptualize this in their head. So the next time they're watching CNN when a hurricane's approaching, or they're watching Fox News, or if you're in the Middle East, you're watching Al Jazeera, it gives these people a way to conceptualize this, and we're also teaching them the different terminology, so they're becoming more aware about the concepts of emergency management, and they can actually buy into the process of emergency management, okay? So this is an example of the Diamond and Iceberg Model, and it's a way for all to be able to easily conceptualize, but not only that, for you as emergency managers to explain this model to those who you're trying to get extra budget, extra resources, or different types of supplies from. So it's up to you to help these elected officials, these citizens, these communities, these countries, the international community to decide if they want to be a diamond or an iceberg. Thank you.